Hello everyone, this is Bob Nisbet, and this is my reproduction of my talk about artist Walter Oehrle at the 2022 Montana History Conference. Walter Oehrle was a commercial illustrator who drew bear art for the Union Pacific Railroad Yellowstone brochures and the designs for the Bear Pit Cocktail Lounge in the Old Faithful Inn. In September 2018, I wandered into the Bear Paw Deli in the Old Faithful Inn and noticed the bear panel art on the walls. This set off my quest to find out more about the artist, Walter Oehrle. Within a month or two, I had found Walter's 90-year-old daughter, Keith, and his grandson, Bart, both living in Maryland. They would help me immensely with researching Walter's story. Walter was the middle child of Emanuel and Elizabeth Oehrle of Omaha, Nebraska, born in 1892. Walter's daughter Keith called them a working-class family. Emanuel was a pattern maker, making wooden models of parts later cast into metal in his own shop and then later for the Union Pacific Railroad. He was also a wood carver. This cigar humidor is still in the family, and he carved wooden ships. Walter showed an interest in art at an early age and won a silver badge from St. Nicholas Magazine for his A Cataclysm drawing at age 14. In World War I, he served in the Motor Transport Corps in Omaha. He studied art at the Chicago Academy of Fine Arts and the Art Institute of Chicago. For a time, he worked for the Omaha Bee newspaper. There was a woman there, Leah Keith, who was a secretary and movie critic. He threw paper clips at Leah through a window separating their desks to get her attention. It worked, and they were married in 1920. The Union Pacific Railroad had a line which brought visitors to West Yellowstone and began a Yellowstone advertising campaign in 1923 with brochures featuring cartoon bear art, train schedules, and park information. Walter drew and signed 8 brochure covers with his signature from 1925 through 1929. 2 other Omaha artists, William and Kenneth Wilmarth, had signed art in 1930 for the brochures. But after that, all the brochure covers were unsigned. Here's an illustration how Walter would anthropomorphize his bears. Walter's only known visit to Yellowstone was in 1933. Here is Walter and Leah with the Old Faithful Inn in the background, and Leah reeling in a trout while fishing on Yellowstone Lake. Walter drew a bear while in the park with Leah holding up a food bait on a stick in a photograph by George Alexander Grant. Here is a prize-winning shot from the 1933 trip used in later Union Pacific brochures. Prohibition ended in December 1933, and by 1934, architect Robert Reamer and W.M. Nichols, president of the Yellowstone Park Hotel Company, exchanged ideas for cocktail lounges in the park hotels. At the same time, Walter and his family moved to Chicago. Reamer envisioned 7-foot-high panels decorated with sandblasted designs featuring animals for the Old Faithful Inn Bear Pit Lounge. Reamer wrote, "I wouldn't mind adding a touch of humor to this room. If your Chicago cartoonist would rough out some of his funny bears, they might be used to advantage." A Seattle glass company accidentally discovered a method to create sandblasted stencil designs on Douglas fir boards. Reamer used this technique in the Emerson Hotel in Hoquiam, Washington in 1924, and also to decorate the Old Faithful Inn dining room in 1927. Nichols contacted Walter in early 1935 to design amusing bears for what he called a combination buffet and wine room, with a copy to Reamer. This is the man who makes the funny bears for the Union Pacific Railroad, whom you spoke about in the park last year. By April, Walter had produced 17 designs, and later the trio would decide on 12 for the lounge. The designs featured bears in 9 of the designs, but also included a pelican, moose, and bighorn sheep. The Yellowstone Park Hotel Company received a bill for $1,200 from Walter on May 7, 1935, and Nichols was shocked by the price. I don't know whether you realize it or not, but I very nearly had a heart attack when I looked at the figures. I dislike very much to question anyone's bill, but I can assure you that if I had known you were going to charge that much, we would have got along without the panels. Sensing a small price break would not suffice, Walter cut the bill in half to $600, saying he forgot he was working on a decorative job, not an advertising campaign. Nichols was quite pleased. Construction of the panels was contracted to the Guarantee Millwork Company of Seattle, and the panels were shipped to Yellowstone on July 24. They were installed at the end of August and were creating quite a bit of talk. Here are examples of the bear panels from the lounge and 2 in the Yellowstone Heritage Center. A Bear Pit Cocktail Lounge brochure was created around this time, which explained the process of making the Douglas fir art panels. The drawings were projected to 8 by 4 foot in size, traced to make a reverse stencil, the stencil fastened to wood, and sand blown across the surface twice to make a two-toned effect. They were finally stained, waxed, and polished. Walter worked on Yellowstone-related art from 1925 to 1935. In 1936, he worked as an animator for Walt Disney. In the 1940 census listed his occupation as a freelance artist, including for railroad and telephone companies. So he certainly could have continued making bear art for the Yellowstone travel brochures for the railroad, but all the brochures are unsigned at that time. By 1939, he was working on the Elsie the Cow advertising campaign for the Borden Company. Here he is drawing Elsie the Cow at the New York World's Fair. This is an advertising campaign he would work on into the 1950s. The family moved to New York City and then a New York suburb in Pelham, New York. Walter passed away of a heart attack in 1957 while putting up his easel while visiting family in Omaha, so he was an artist until his end. The bear panels were on display until 1962 when the Bear Pit Lounge was moved to what had been the East Dining Room, and the panels went into storage. During a 1980s renovation and preservation project, a visitor from 1941 remembered the panels and shared his copy of the brochure. A search found 9 or 10 panels at that time. 5 of the original panels returned to their original room, which is now the Bear Paw Deli, and 2 are in storage in the Yellowstone Heritage Center. As part of the 1980s renovation project, a contract was let to the Great Plains Glass Company of Denver to recreate 8 of Walter's designs in sculpted glass. A combination of hand and photo stenciling added a high degree of sophistication and richness to the artwork. These glass panels separate the current Bear Pit Cocktail Lounge from the main Old Faithful dining room. They are 3 by 6 feet tall with edge lighting. In April 2022, Walter's grandson Bart emailed me that his mother Keith had passed away at the age of 94. A few days later, Bart died at age 69 of a heart attack. Bart provided family photos, family history, newspaper clippings, and interviewed his mother with my questions for Walter's story. Walter's art legacy lives on in the Old Faithful Inn with the 5 original 1935 Douglas fir art panels and the 8 reproductions in glass separating the Old Faithful dining room and Bear Pit cocktail lounge.